Hello, welcome to my next video. In the previous video, we looked at the digitization part. Now, in document understanding, there is another step which is called taxonomy and the taxonomy manager. So, before getting into the classification, extraction, and this stuff, it's important to know what taxonomy is and how to manage your taxonomy and what is the importance of this taxonomy. So, let's get started. What exactly is the taxonomy? When you do document processing, you come across different document types. For example, you come across invoices, purchase orders, receipts, and so on. Each document will have different fields that you want to extract. The fields may not be common across all documents. Additionally, the fields that you define will also have its own data type. For example, if it's the invoice number, this could be a text. If it's a vendor name, the data type of this could be text or even name. Same goes for address. So likewise, you need to define the fields, define the document types that you are going to process in a document understanding workflow. That is given to the workflow through the taxonomy. So taxonomy is actually a hierarchical structure that tells the bot that these are the documents you are going to process, the data types, and so on. So that's what a taxonomy is. And how is it helpful? Well, we use this taxonomy and we use the taxonomy manager to create the taxonomy in document understanding workflows. It is a part of the intelligent OCR, UiPath intelligent OCR activities. And how is this helpful? So, as a part of document processing, there are a few stages. First one is the digitizing, then comes the classification, extraction, validation, and so on. So the taxonomy is helpful in the classification and also in the data extraction. And lastly, when you are training the models, that helps there as well. So why it is helpful for classification? Because this is where you tell the robot that these are the documents you are going to process. So using the taxonomy, the bot can identify the document type and get the related information in the classification step. In the data extraction, when it comes to extracting, it needs to know what are the fields you are going to extract. So that is given in the extraction stage through the taxonomy. So these are the places where we are going to use it. And then in the training step as well. Again, we use different methods for training these extractors and classifiers. We'll get to that a bit later, but that's also another step that we are going to use it. So in the taxonomy, we have different data types, and you need to remember these for the certification. I will also show this in the taxonomy manager itself in a moment. But for now, I found this table here in the documentation very helpful because it has a nice table. This information is visible easily. So we have several data types. We have text, number, date, name, address, set, boolean, table, and table column. These are the data types we have when you're defining the taxonomy in Taxonomy Manager. It's important to remember this and what it is. Text is for usual text just like a normal string. Number is for numeric values. Then comes the date. It also has a special feature. So you know that with the date there are so many parameters like the date, month, year, and so on. So in the taxonomy, when you define the date field, it also gives you a formatted value that gives you the data in this particular format. So let's say, for example, you have a date field in an invoice, and when you extract this date, the date can be written in so many different ways. But you can also specify the format to tell in whatever the format you have the date, I want the date in this specific format. We'll see how these things work in action in later sessions, but for now, just remember that these options are available. Then comes the name, and this is mainly used for person names. So for this, again, when it comes to a name, we have the given name, last name, middle name, and so on. You can also do that conversion automatically. These things happen automatically. So when you extract a name, let's say John Doe, it will not be a string, just like in this text feature. The type, if you use the name, it will automatically identify what the first name is, what's the last name, and put it into these things. So you can even get the formatted text. Same for address, you have all these things that you can get as a formatted address. Set. Set is more of a predefined value set. So what happens here is it's similar to a drop down. You have a set of values that you can use. Through the set, you can through the set property in the taxonomy manager, you can define what kind of values that you may expect. And in the extractor part, you can define how you are going to map the extracted values to those drop downs, so it automatically picks it. I have done a similar video on this through using regular expressions, using the regex extractor. I have the link mentioned in the description. You can have a look how it is done, but we'll also see in later videos. And these drop downs will also be reflected in your validation screen. Then comes the boolean, which is yes and no. Tabular data, so it's table to define tabular data extraction. So if it's again an invoice, you have the line items. Before defining the columns in the table, you need to create a tabular data field, and inside that you can define all the table columns. It's kind of a hierarchy. These are the data types we have to define our taxonomy when we do it. So let's quickly have a look how this looks like. In the studio, you can access the taxonomy manager and this load taxonomy activity using the UiPath intelligent OCR activity. That's where you can see this. As soon as you install this dependency, this taxonomy manager will show up on your top ribbon. So let's get into taxonomy manager. So this is the taxonomy manager initial screen. And one important thing to remember is once you start creating your taxonomy here, this information will get saved in this specific location. So this is usually within your project. It will create a taxonomy.json file within your project. So basically over here, there is my solution folder. Let's start creating one. There are a few important things again while creating this. There's a specific order that we need to follow. First of all, we need to create a group. You need to give meaningful names here while creating this taxonomy. I will just say finance. The next step is creating the category for this group. You can have multiple categories for each group. And the next one is the document type. Let's say it's an invoice. You can already see that it's getting into that hierarchical structure. Once you get into the document type, you can see few information. One is this. This is the document type ID, and this has the name in this specific format. Finance is the group we created, incoming is the category, then the document type. So it is always in this specific order: group, category, and document name. It's important to remember this. Um, then let's start creating few fields. Let's say invoice number. For this, I'll give it as text, and here you can see all the data types that we talked about earlier. For text, is the default string value, and now you can also see the fields that get created here. The field also has that same name: group, category, document type, and the field name. So if you get a question in the certification, how this looks like, what's the order? It's the group, category, document type, and the field name for fields. Let's look into these extra features in a later video. For this one, the main focus is on these data types and how we define the fields, because I want to show you something after this. And let's create another one, invoice date, and this is for date type. And I told you that this type has a where you can define the format. When you click on that field, you get that place where you can specify the expected format, just like what we saw in the documentation. So let's create another one. This time, let's do it for a tabular data. First, you need to say that these line items will be a table, and inside that you can define the columns, like the description, quantity, and so on. For now, I'll just create only one. So this is how you define the fields. The same applies if you want to define a set. If you create set here, in the next screen, you'll get a place where you can add the expected values that you need to show in the dropdown, in the validation screen. So that's all about the taxonomy manager for this video. There are a few extra things again that I'll cover later in another video, but this is the basic. And while we have been doing this, the file should have been created automatically, and it's here, the JSON file for taxonomy. Let's close this and quickly have a look over here. And here we can see the document type ID, the same thing that we saw in the taxonomy window. And for the fields, you have the same order and everything else that you need to know for the taxonomy. It has a hierarchy. This JSON file is used in our workflow in multiple ways. The primary way is using the load taxonomy activity. It has only one input. It doesn't have any input. It only has one output, which is the taxonomy output. So you can create a variable, and this is going to be of type document taxonomy. So no inputs. Input is actually the JSON file. It just gives you the document taxonomy variable by reading it through this load taxonomy activity. So this is one way of using this in your workflow. There is another way. Let's say you want to use this same taxonomy across multiple projects, and that has to be common across projects. As of now, our taxonomy file is inside this project. But if you want to make it common, you can read the taxonomy file the JSON file in a different way. So in that case, we can't use this load taxonomy activity. For that, we'll have to use file reading activities like read text file and so on, and read it as a text and then convert it to document taxonomy data type. How is this possible? We have few uh, extension methods that come from taxonomy. So these are the three methods. And again, you need to remember these three. Let's look at the first one, serialize. What happens with the serialize is you can convert the document taxonomy object to a JSON representation, which you can use to store the data in somewhere else like a file. So how can we use this? It's by, let me use a right line over here. So we use the doc taxonomy and we say serialize. And if I run this, that should give me the text version of the document taxonomy in the output panel. So here it is. Now let's look at the other method, the deserialize. Now this one is you have the document taxonomy as a string and you need to convert that to document taxonomy object. So when you read it from a file, you can use this deserialize, convert it to this type. You have all the options available. Get fields. Now this is another method that we have to, if you want to get all the fields for a specific document type, you can use this method. So let's look at this during runtime. Let me add a breakpoint and let's run this. Let me clear this immediate panel. Okay, so we need to do dot taxonomy dot get fields, and I need to give that document type ID because it expects the document type ID. In our case, what is the document type ID? You can get it from this JSON file. You can either get it from the JSON file or you can get it from the taxonomy manager. And this will give me the list of fields I have for this document type. You can already see the line description is here, invoice date is here, invoice number is here. Those information is available here. That's how you can access this information using that extension method. And you need to also remember a few things. Though you can use this JSON file outside the project, it is always recommended to have a separate taxonomy file for each project. Because if something goes wrong, all your projects goes wrong. And if you want to add anything, it will affect all the projects. If you want to add one field for a specific project, you can't have a shared file. So it's always good to have its own version of it. Additionally, this we also upgrade these dependencies, and there will be new things coming up, new features coming up. So just as a best practice, it's always good to have a separate JSON file. And there are a few other things that I want to show, some best practices that you can follow while while creating the taxonomy in the taxonomy manager. So in the build a document understanding automation in studio academic course, we have this pro tips while using the taxonomy manager. So have a look at this one. This is important to understand what are the best practices and methods that we need to follow. And in the next video, we'll see what are those extra parameters that we saw in the taxonomy manager, when it is used, and how we can use those. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. I also have mentioned all of these documentation link in the video description and some related videos, so you can have a look at those as well. And thank you so much for listening. I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.